Hey guys, coming at you with another episode from the Handy Life TV. This is going to be a breakout video from the previous vegetable garden that I'm holding on to right here. The video was getting really long for this, so I took out the segment where we joined together all the boards to make the walls. I'm going to show that here. What I'm going to show is basically edge-to-edge joining that can be used in lots of different furniture applications, or anytime you're building any kind of a wall like this out of wood. But it's going to follow very similar steps in any of those cases. So if you see this one, you can pretty much go about building a table on your own or other projects as well. So what I'm doing first is laying the boards out, making sure I got the right arrangement. I didn't want this arrangement because the coloring is kind of one-sided, whereas this sort of splits up the coloring. Then you got to focus a little bit on the grain and everything. A lot more critical when you're doing a piece of furniture than when you're doing something outside in a vegetable garden. So this is the arrangement I like. So what I'm going to do is turn all the boards over. This is my unplaned bad side. You can see all the saw blade marks in it. Now, you might not be able to see it on camera, but there's a lot of saw blade marks in it. So now I line up the edge, one of the edges, because these may not be exactly the same length. I'm going to cut them down to the last step of the job. And then I mark it with a pencil across the joints. These marks are going to be where my biscuits are going to go. So I'm going to put one kind of close to the end, not right on the end, but kind of close, maybe 4 inches away. One about here. One near the middle. One about symmetrical to that first one, maybe about here. Doesn't need to be exact. And then one, like I said, near the end, similar to the other side. And like I said, I'm marking across the board, so now the mark is on both boards, and I can come back with my biscuit joiner tool and cut my slot for my biscuit. Again, I use Harbor Freight tools somewhat often, and my biscuit joiner is a $60 tool from Harbor Freight. You can buy this thing for a lot more money than 60 bucks. Basically, the way this tool works is this whole assembly here, it slides back and it exposes a very small saw blade. And that saw blade plunges into the wood and makes a little slot. A little slot that will then accept a biscuit, which in this case, it's a number 20 biscuit. So that goes in there. And once I put the slot in both boards, it is not going to allow the boards to move up and down with respect to each other. So that's going to allow me to fix my alignment a lot better than if I didn't have the biscuits. The biscuits, you know, they might help a little bit with strength, but the glue is plenty good all by itself. So the biscuits are mostly just for alignment. So now I'm going to take these boards away and start making my biscuit joints, my biscuit slots. It's a very quick process to do this, and I'll show you just a couple of them. So you want to push your board down, make sure it's flush, because the height of the slot will also, if it's off, it will mess up your alignment. So you want to push the board down, make sure it's flush with the tabletop, turn on the biscuit joiner. And that's it. All the slots I need for this board are done. And I'll show you a couple of them there. You can probably see that one. Yeah, like I said, it's going to fit that little biscuit in there. And there'll be a corresponding slot on the board next to it. And that will help me align this top surface just right. Alright, biscuit slots are cut. So now it's time for the glue up. So we run a bead of glue on the top of on the edge of one of the boards. That's going to form the joint between the two. And then I go ahead and put a little line of glue in the biscuit slots, just to make sure that biscuit has enough glue in there. I want to see some squeeze out when I put the biscuit in. So just a small line of glue in the slots. Okay. And then I've got 5 biscuits that I'm going to put in this connection here. So I just take out a few. And then I use my finger. On a job this small, I can use my finger and just smear the glue out. I'm not looking for a huge amount of glue, but I want to make sure I have good coverage. I mean, that's really the best thing that's going to hold all the glue, is to make sure you have good coverage. You don't want to just leave the glue line like this and then let it squeeze out whatever preferential way it wants to squeeze out, because then you may not get the amount of area coverage with the glue. What I'm doing now is just making sure I lubricate the biscuit a little bit, and then I'm just going to stick it in its joint, and it should be a rather tight fit. It may not even go all the way down, like this one didn't quite go all the way down. That's fine. Once I clamp it up, it will go all the way down. And what I like to do is just go ahead and take a little glue on my finger and lubricate the other side so it goes in without too much commotion into the other slot on the other board. I'm a little light on glue here, so I add a little bit more. I'm just using Tite Bond. You can buy this at Home Depot. I like this green one because it sets up a little slower than the standard yellow glue that they sell. It just allows, when you're doing glue ups, I mean, this is a relatively small glue up with only a few boards. But when you're doing more extensive, bigger glue ups, you don't have a lot of time. You end up kind of fighting the clock and fighting the curing of that glue. You gotta work really fast. The more boards you have in general, the more difficult it is, and the more hectic a glue up can be. I recently did a table that had, I think, 8 or 9 boards, and they were all 6 inches wide. It's a pretty good sized table. The table's about 8 feet long. That was a lot more stressful glue up, just because you're fighting with that many boards. A little bit more glue here. And that's basically what you're doing. I'm going to pick up the video again whenever I go to clamp it all up. Okay, I pushed these two together. I've got this board glued up and ready to go. So basically you're just turning the boards on their sides and you're lining up your marks and ensuring that the biscuits go into their slots properly. All right. And with all the biscuits, you got to really just making sure that they're sliding in. As long as they are, then you can go ahead and clamp it up and force it in, which is what I'll do now. Now this works best with, I hear it works best with parallel clamps. Parallel clamps are quite a bit more expensive than what I have here. Eventually one day I might invest in some, but for now, I'm just using these. The advantage of parallel clamps is that it provides a nice even pressure across the surface, and it doesn't allow the boards to curl on you. But even with cheap clamps, there's ways around that problem. I'll put this one on the bottom. And this is just to pull the joints together. I'm gonna end up putting a lot more clamps than just 3. But you can see how the joints are closing up. All right. Looking pretty good. Yeah, I'll probably put about 8 or 9 clamps on this one. Right now I'm going to take them off though, and transfer it to the sawhorses. So I've got a little bit of squeeze out of the glue. I'm gonna have a lot more in just a minute. The clamps back on, I put a whole bunch of clamps. You're trying to get even distribution of the pressure, try to get squeeze out along the whole length of the boards, so you know you have good coverage. Sometimes you might want to wait a little while before getting the glue off, let it dry a little bit, and then you can kind of scrape it off with a putty knife, and then you'll come back and sand more anyway. Again, this is an outdoor garden, so I'm not going to be doing any sanding, so I'm trying to just get rid of the glue. So I'm using a wet rag for that, and just wiping the glue as best I can out of the joints while it's still wet. And then we'll end up with some boards that are pretty much ready to use. We can just trim the ends and go ahead and assemble everything. And that is pretty much all there is to it. These boards are gonna dry nice and solid, and you'll find that the surface, because we used those biscuits, we didn't really have to worry too much about it, and it came out perfectly smooth. And that's the case for all the walls. So anyway, good luck building your vegetable garden, your table, or whatever else you're doing that's going to use edge-to-edge joining like this.